Hey guys, we got another batch of AITA stories for you. The first one up will be about a good person and friend who has a friend that doesn't really deserve their kindness. My friend is a recent widow, and it's been a long time coming, but that hardly makes it any easier. Her husband passed away at the end of February, and she's been understandably distraught since. I've tried my best to support her through this, even though I can't possibly understand what she's going through. And at the beginning of March, she asked me if I'd stay over during the night because she couldn't stand sleeping alone in an empty house. I obliged and temporarily moved in once I was sure that my husband was okay with it. She's not been taking care of herself, so I've been doing 100% of the household chores and taking care of her and all the responsibilities, on top of working full-time. Well, last week, she sprang on me how much she was expecting for me to be paying in rent from here on out. She heavily implied that I was taking advantage of her in her grief trying to live in her house for free, and that she expects me to back pay her rent for the 2 months that I had already been there. I was extremely insulted by this, and I told her that I would transfer her the money that she wanted, but I would be moving out, back to my own house, where I'm also paying rent. So I got my stuff together and was out within a couple of hours. She has since asked me to come back, but I have refused. I told her that I'd still do her shopping and I would still come over to help her with a few bits, but I would not be spending another night in her house. AITA. No, you basically became a maid for this person for free to help them, and then they wanted to take advantage of you by having you do their housework and then you paying their bills. That's messed up. Quite frankly, you shouldn't have paid anything, let alone 2 full months worth of rent, while you're taking care of them. Grieving widow or not, that doesn't mean you can be a piece of crap and take advantage of your friends. My 2 cents is just cut contact with this person. They're not worth it. Alright guys, that's the end of the first story. This next one up is about a mother that screams Karen. I'm part-timing in a IT company that is very close-knit, and my boss Steven and his wife were always very sweet. During my first month, it was my boss's birthday week, so he and his wife Melissa were kind enough to include me in this fancy dinner that they were taking everyone to. A week prior to this dinner, Melissa added everyone to a group chat and asked whether we had any suggestions on where to eat. I told her that I'm fine with anything as long as there's vegetarian options available, or at least chicken. They brought their daughter Steph to the dinner, and she's a sweet little girl. Now, Steph was really interested in me, and she kept asking me questions about how I look the way I do. Now, for information, I'm vertically impaired at 5 feet, but can somewhat be deemed as fit by today's generation. I was transparent with her and told her that I don't restrict myself to certain foods, but rather I eat everything in moderation. Plus, I have a plant-based diet and home-cooked meals, so that helps, and I also lift weights. Now, Melissa overheard our conversation partially, so she pulled me aside and told me that Steph was recovering from an eating disorder, so she encouraged me to be honest with her and not lie to her, and not to order anything that screams diet. Now, when I saw the menu, there were little to no vegetarian options available. It didn't have anything for me, and I was very disappointed, and made a comment that, oh wow, there's no vegetarian options. So Melissa chimed in and said that eating meat once in a while wouldn't affect my weight. Now, when I say plant-based diet, it's not that I don't eat meat, but I only eat chicken maybe once a week as a side dish, and certain types of fish occasionally, but other than that, I just mostly eat vegetarian dishes. My food habits aren't for my weight so much as they are for my religion and culture, So when the waiter came in, I was still glued to my menu when all the others had already ordered. And then Melissa said, "Oh, she'll have the duck too." So I interrupted and said that, no, actually I won't. I'll be having the garden salad. Even though I hate salads because there just wasn't any other vegetarian options. And Melissa got very quiet. After a few minutes, she told me that I shouldn't have lied and lead on her daughter if I was going to order a skinny salad and starve myself. She said that I'm just like those Instagram influencers who lie to impressionable young girls about their food habits and bodies, and I just proved that by ordering a salad after giving her daughter a "don't restrict yourself" speech, and that I probably triggered her eating disorder. I tried to explain that I only ordered a salad because there was no other option in the menu for me. But then she responded, saying that I should have just sucked it up and eaten the dang duck, as it wasn't going to affect my weight. But I again corrected that it is a religious thing and not a diet thing. She said that if I eat chicken, then obviously I would eat other animals too, and I was just putting up an act. It was horrible. She completely tore me down, and I immediately left. Well, OP, I would say that you're not the jerk in this particular case. I would say a lot of this just boils down to Melissa being a rather piss-poor excuse for a parent. I have a lot of belief that the reason why the daughter even got an eating disorder in the first place is probably because of psychological issues that her mother has dealt her. And not to mention the fact that the mother brought this person who is recovering from an eating disorder, presumably anorexia nervosa, or potentially even bulimia, into a restaurant where they're going to see a lot of different people eating a lot of different foods. And not only that, but this mother is obviously also very controlling in the fact that they just tried to tell the OP what to eat, and how to eat it, irregardless of their religious or cultural influence. Even if the daughter wasn't in this particular story, Melissa trying to force the OP to eat something that they didn't is not okay. Especially if they say that they're not doing it for personal reasons. It doesn't matter what those reasons are. They don't want to eat it. And to think that she thinks that she's important enough to dictate what other people eat, Melissa really needs to get off her high horse and get a reality check. Well guys, that's the end of the second story. The next one up is about a man who has effectively regressed back into his teenage years. My husband has an obsession with TikTok, and unfortunately, he's 40, not 14. He takes his phone to the bathroom and will just spend ages just mindlessly scrolling. We have 2 young kids, and I think he just does it for some peace. But it means that I'm constantly having to go and knock on the door, asking, "Are you okay? Are you going to be long? Will you come up and help with the tiny humans?" Quite frankly, it's a pain in the bum. I was making a full roast dinner and saw him heading upstairs. I said that it would be ready in 20 minutes. Don't be long. I set the table, finished cooking, got the plate set, and got the kids to the table, and just thought that I'm not going to get him. This is ridiculous. I wanted to see just how long it would actually take him to come out on his own, which was about 2 hours and 10 minutes. In that amount of time, we had finished our meals, I had cleaned the kitchen and the floor, done the dishes, and done a load of laundry, and the kids were now halfway through a film. He came down and yelled at me that I should have told him that the meal was ready. I told him that I'm not his mother, and it's not my job to go and seek him. So he stormed out, saying that he wasn't eating his meal now as roast dinners are rubbish heated in the microwave, and that all of this is my fault and I'm a jerk. You're joking, right? This is your husband? Are we sure that he isn't actually just a child? If he's 40, he should be well over 20 years past the point of asking mommy, his wife, to come and tell him that his din-din is ready for him. Does he also expect you to read him a bedtime story and warm up some milk for him so he can go to Betty Bye as well? It's ridiculous. Needless to say, no, you're not the jerk here. You already have 2 children. You didn't ask for a completely grown one as well. Alright, that's the end of that story. The last one I have for you today is about some really rather crappy in-laws. I lost my son to congenital heart disease, and he didn't survive the open heart surgery at the age of 1 year and 6 months. He was the greatest blessing I had ever had in my life, and everyone kept telling me how things would get easier with time, but I know that no matter how much time goes by, I'll still be missing my baby boy and everything about him. My mother and I were always in constant conflict. We never got along and things had always been bad between us. But in those particular months, we peaked. She kept getting involved in my son's treatment and criticized every decision that I made, claiming that I didn't know how to handle my son's illness. We went radio silent, but she kept causing issues occasionally. My husband was torn between our son's illness and his mother's issues. And when my son passed, she came to the funeral and caused a scene by arguing with me, knowing that I had no energy for it. And she used the fact that everyone was there so that she could say that it was my fault that my son was born sick and that I didn't take care of him properly, and that I didn't listen to her when she suggested other ways to treat his condition, and that I'm the one that took their grandchild away from them and caused them heartache. She then loudly called me a bad mother, and I have no idea how I kept my composure and kept standing on both feet. My mother and sister responded by telling her to leave, while my husband was sat there crying. She then went to tell everyone that I kicked her out, as a way to hurt her further, and lied that I convinced my husband to ban her from visiting her grandson's grave. My husband later sent his side of the family an email, talking about my mother-in-law's behavior during and after our son's illness, and telling them that he will no longer be seeing her. This had the family criticizing us, saying that the mother-in-law was just trying to do what was best for her grandbaby, and called us selfish for assuming that we were the only ones struggling with this tragedy. At the time of this post, we haven't seen his mother in 1 year and 8 months, and I'm now 3 months pregnant. No one knew except for my sister-in-law, which is my brother-in-law's wife. But word got out, even though we told her to not say anything. A week after, I had family members saying that I was invited to a dinner being hosted by the mother-in-law, so that she could apologize in front of both of us, and in front of the whole family, and settle this issue before the baby was born. They said that the mother-in-law was regretful, and offered to financially provide for her grandbaby, and they want to see that. I refused, but my husband surprisingly wanted me to go. I had his grandparents calling me, telling me that I'm a person with a good heart, and forgiveness is something that I'm capable of giving. I told them that I would never be sitting at the same table with the person who called me a bad mother at my own child's funeral. I still remember it vividly to this very day. My sisters said this change of heart from the mother-in-law is probably for the new baby. It could be, but I insisted that I wouldn't go. And they're saying that I'm making it hard for everyone to move on and pass this unresolved pain and should really go. Well, if my 2 cents are worth anything, and, well, they're not, but I'm going to say what I want to say anyway, don't ever give these people anything. Don't give them the time of day, don't frickin' talk to them ever again, etc. I can't say with utmost certainty on anything here, but from my own personal experiences that have been in a similar vein as the mother-in-law, her turning a new leaf and the whole spiel about, well, you're a good person, and good people can forgive one another, is just a whole ploy to get this person back into the frickin' midst to try to manipulate them emotionally again. Screw these people. Seriously. They're garbage human beings, and if they do actually feel any amount of regret for what they did or said, then good. Let them live with that regret for the rest of their miserable lives. Alright, well, that's the end of the fourth and last story, and thus, the end of the video. So, let me know what you guys think of the stories in the comments, and, as always, have a good one.